Having been announced not so long ago, the Independent Electoral Commission has announced that the ANC indeed were one of the biggest winners across the 95 wards that were contested in this year's by-elections. Unfortunately, the Democratic Alliance losing out in quite a few of those wards and even releasing a few seats and giving them back, if you want to call it that. My colleague Natasha Phiri is on the story for us and has been following it right through. Natasha, the numbers tell the story, right? And as they say, numbers don't lie.
Indeed, Arabile, numbers do not lie. News there coming in that the ANC has been, named as the biggest winner for these by-elections in those 95 wards across 55 municipalities in all 9 provinces. The ANC managed to retain 64 wards, Arabile losing 2 wards and winning 6 new wards. And for the DA, which have emerged as the biggest losers, they've retained 14 wards and lost 9 wards. They've also won 2 new wards. But for the EFF, nothing. But for more of this and for more on these results, we're joined by the Vice Chairperson of the IEC, Commissioner Janet Love. Thank you so much for joining us on SABC. I mean, just talk us through the whole process. Are you happy with the outcomes? I do, however, notice that, voter participation has actually decreased.
So we're happy with the way in which the events proceeded. It went smoothly from an organizational point of view. We're really grateful to voters for understanding and complying with the requirements that we had stipulated in terms of COVID-19 and really doing that without complaint. And we also are generally happy at the fact that things went along for the most part peacefully. Participation in by-elections, as we've seen over the years, has never been something where we see a significant turnout. Does that mean as an electoral commission that's okay? We would obviously like to ensure that participation would be at its maximum, not just in relation to those who are registered, but even in terms of an increase in the registration. But this is what is really a collective endeavor. It's what, as a country, we need to ensure that we have the kind of education around democracy and so on, and your role as the media in bringing to light people's understanding and attention and knowledge of what is happening is absolutely critical. So we really appreciate that, and we would want to see things going, strength by strength. What we were concerned about in this election was that because of the anxiety in relation to COVID, because of the fact that by-elections hadn't happened for so long, we would see a significant downturn. That, fortunately, we didn't see, and we're grateful for that, given that there was very, very bad weather in parts of the country and so on. So, I think that as far as turnout is concerned, that's the sort of overview that I would be able to give you.
Commissioner Love, another challenge that the IEC had spoken about were those just 2 isolated incidences in Amahlathi in the Eastern Cape and Naledi in Soweto. We saw police intervene. We saw the IEC intervene by making or creating new voting stations. But in terms of, the South African Police Service, have you had any word of any arrests, perhaps?
At this stage, we have not, and obviously we're very early on in the sort of understanding of any kind of follow-ups and so on. But we have no knowledge at this stage of complaints. We have urged that any action action that has impeded elections is brought to the attention of the police, and the police know that it is something that they are prepared to respond to and to do so in accordance with the law.
Now, moving forward, the IEC is going to use the by-elections as a template moving forward. What lessons have you drawn from this, good or bad?
So I think the first lesson is in relation to the processes that are in place in relation to the health requirements and in relation to COVID, and the fact that with that kind of education and with that kind of outreach to people who are going to vote, there's a real understanding and a respect for those requirements. I think the second thing is really just that we applaud the fact that this was really, really peaceful. I think what that maybe doesn't always reveal is the work that goes into that on behalf of everybody. Work that's not just by election commission officials, but work by community organizations, religious leaders, and so on, that really have made for an understanding. And what we would, as a lesson going forward, really encourage is that those kinds of interventions, those kinds of engagements continue, so that we can see the same kind of peaceful engagement, the same kind of democratic behavior in the municipal elections in 2021.
Commissioner Love, were there any incidences where officials had to visit people who had applied for special votes in quarantine sites? I think a lot of people have been asking in regards to that.
So I'm not, the special votes applications would have been received by the Chief Electoral Officer and his delegated staff. I'm not aware of specific sites, but we were in discussion both with the Department of Health as well as with COGTA in order to ensure that where such requests came, arrangements would be able to be made, and we were assured that that was actually the case. So from the point of view of what those arrangements were, they would vary from institution to institution, and I think that in terms of following up on some of that detail, that's something that we would be able to get more from the actual officials who are the presiding officers on the ground, but it was part of the special voting procedure.
And I mean, Commissioner Love, you're approaching by-elections in December, in January, and you spoke about the importance of people being educated about by-elections. I mean, up to this day, when engaging with some people aren't even aware of what by-elections are and weren't even aware that within their various wards there were by-elections. You've been given probably 2 months till, no, actually a month and 2 months to January. Are there any election drives that the IEC is probably, thinking of doing in terms of educating the community about by-elections?
So our outreach program, which is a program that involves engaging both with organizations and engaging from our regional offices within community situations. Our outreach program, as you can imagine, during COVID was very, very severely limited, but has re-galvanized itself and has begun to get reactivated, and we've already been having a number of stakeholder meetings in different provinces in order to ensure that there's a consciousness both in terms of by-elections but also for the elections next year. Again, I just want to emphasize the absolutely significant role of the media, of community radio and so on, but also of civic organizations. We aren't in a position where the engagements that we had with tertiary, using tertiary institutions and high schools for the learners in the last years. Unfortunately, again, because of COVID, that hasn't been possible. We look forward to a situation where those sorts of engagements can occur, and we are looking at opportunities for engaging with those institutions going forward.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your time. We will catch up with you in the later stage. Of course, that was the Vice Chairperson of the IEC, Commissioner Janet Love Arabile. And for those who've just tuned into the SABC channel, if you don't know, the ANC has won the majority of the wards in those 95 municipalities. The DA has been the biggest loser in this whole process. And Arabile, I think what's interesting, speaking to various analysts just right after, John Steenhuisen was elected as the leader of the DA, they had said that, him winning as the leader of the DA would actually consolidate votes of the DA, meaning that they also would want to win votes from the FF Plus and etc. And Arabile, right now, I mean, if analysts are busy saying that this by-election is a barometer of what's actually going to happen next year at the local 2021 government elections, then the DA really is in big trouble. But with that said, it's back to you in studio.
My colleague Natasha Phiri there holding down the fort for us at that IEC briefing as we conclude then the by-elections for 2020. Indeed, as she says, The DA certainly in a lot of trouble if this becomes a precursor to next year's municipal elections. Then the ANC winning big by the seams of things, but the Democratic Alliance unfortunately losing quite a few seats, 9 by the seams of it as well by that count. We'll